everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture, and we are back for another Ups and Downs for Season 2. We have officially passed the halfway mark. This week we are looking at the story and the engine, and what an episode that was. Before we do continue though, I want to take a moment to tell you a story about our sponsor for this week's video, Surfshark. Using a VPN like Surfshark is a bit like having your own Tardis. All the important stuff stays private and secure when you're out and about online. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm out shopping or sightseeing and my only internet option is one of those weird looking public Wi-Fi networks, I'm always like, nope. But with Surfshark, your data is protected while using public Wi-Fi, so you don't become a victim of identity theft or fraudulent purchases. So you don't need to worry about being turned into a spoonhead or anything like that. Plus, you can even change your virtual location while traveling, so you will still have access to your BBC iPlayer or Disney Plus content while in another country. So there is absolutely no excuse for not keeping up to date with these new Doctor Who episodes, especially with the big finale looming. Surfshark also offers 24/7 customer support and a 30-day money-back guarantee. And make sure that you also check out Surfshark Alert as well, a breach detection system that notifies you of personal data leaks. Click the link in the description or use code WhoCulture at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Thank you again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into the ups and downs for the story and the engine.
He hides his identity like a coward, a troll on the web.
So we start this episode with Omo telling the story of when he first met the Doctor. And right from the beginning here, let's come in with an up for the animated painted images that come on the window of the shop as the stories are being told. This just looks incredible, and it's so interesting and different. It's unlike anything we've really ever seen in Doctor Who before. I mean, obviously we had Lux with the cartoon, which was a groundbreaking thing for Doctor Who. But this is also something we haven't really seen in Doctor Who before, and it looks incredible, and I feel like it really aids the storytelling scenes, having this visual representation of the stories being told. And also, can we just talk about the whole concept of this episode, and how stories fuel this machine? It almost has similarities to the Rings of Akaten when you think about it, and the power of stories, but I will come back to this theme later on in the review. So after the cold open, after the title sequence, the Doctor and Belinda arrive in Lagos and do their vindicating. The Doctor goes off to meet his friend Omo at the barber shop. But when he arrives at the barber shop, as soon as he steps through the doors, alarm bells start ringing in the Tardis and something's clearly going badly wrong. It is really nice to finally see all of these LED lights that surround the TARDIS finally being put to good use. Now, we have seen them being used this season, but I feel like there's so much potential that could be tapped into with these lights that can all be different, that can all change and flash, and I finally feel like we're seeing something happening in the TARDIS and making use of these lights. They've been different colours in some episodes, but even with that this season, there's not been that much of it, so I was really glad to see more use of these very expensive, I would imagine, LED lights that surround the TARDIS. And it looked really cool with the big red lights flashing in the TARDIS. That looked amazing. They should use them more. And while we're on the topic of Belinda, here's another up for the episode, which is the use of Belinda in this episode. Now, at first, I will admit I was a little bit concerned that we weren't going to see her for the majority of this episode, and it was going to kind of be a companion-light story because she stayed behind, and I couldn't quite figure out how she was going to fit into this story now that she was still in the TARDIS and the Doctor was God knows where. But actually, I think it really aided the story how she was used in the episode. The fact that she did get left behind, or did stay behind, let me say, but then when she notices something's going wrong, she doesn't just sit back and panic. She probably does panic a little bit, but she uses her initiative. She has agency and tries to seek out the Doctor and try and help and solve the problem, rather than just being at the Doctor's side the entire time and just asking what's going on the whole time. I feel like it made her character feel more well-rounded. She felt like a proper companion in this episode, as opposed to just the person following the Doctor around. I also feel like this episode really helps to fully flesh out the relationship between Belinda and the Doctor. From the moment where the pair of them are kind of almost linked mentally and start laughing at the barber at the same time, like they can read each other's minds. But then there's also Belinda uses her own wisdom in situations, not just listening to what the doctor says, but she has her own agency, she has her own wisdom, and she uses that when she's trying to convince Abby to sort this whole mess out, to stop this from happening. So I think now that we've had this episode, there's a real fleshed out bond between these characters that we didn't see with Ruby and the Doctor. I feel like this season has definitely done a better job of showing us that relationship developing. And then, of course, we have the Doctor's story all about Belinda. And I feel like this scene of us seeing more of her personal life, more of what she's like as a human being, really, really helped to make us feel more connected to the character. Because I did criticize last week that Belinda, compared to Ruby, doesn't really have much for us to feel connected to. We don't know much about her family, her personal life, her home life. And I feel like this scene here really showed us who Belinda is, how much she cares, the sacrifice she makes to care for people. And I really think it helped just build the character of Belinda up even more and make us feel more of a connection to her. And I think really it harks back to this philosophy that the Doctor has, that there is nobody in the universe who isn't important. And we start to see that here in the fact that he tells a story about an ordinary person, but also the fact that we're seeing this person who might seem ordinary, but that is why they're important. Their humanity is what makes them important. So I think that was really, really well done, and the use of Belinda in this episode worked really, really well. However, within this story of Belinda, I do have a down. I feel like it's been a few weeks coming. I've put it off for the last couple of weeks, but I now am at the point where I can't ignore it anymore, and that is Mrs. Flood's appearance in this particular episode. Every week I say, hopefully next week we'll get a little bit more. Hopefully next week we'll see a bit more from her. This week I feel like we've gone backwards. She did not need to be in this episode. Nothing about her appearance in this episode added anything. We didn't learn anything more about the character, and it very much felt like they'd kind of remembered that they'd promised she would be in every episode, so they quickly had to put her in. But it would have made no difference whether she was in this scene or not. So it just felt a little bit underwhelming. And considering, as I said at the beginning, that we're now past the halfway mark, I feel like we should be getting more Mrs. Flood at this point. And as I say, I feel like we've actually gone backwards this week. So I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks. I've put it off. I cannot ignore it any longer. This week, it is a down. But anyway, we'll go back to the barbershop, and the Doctor has finished telling his story, and then he comes to realise that Omo has betrayed him. And that brings me to another up for this episode, because we are getting finally more of a range from this Doctor. He gets angry. He really gets angry. And I feel like, do you know what? This is probably Ncuti's strongest episode in terms of giving a well-rounded performance as the Doctor. Really exploring different levels and layers of the character. I mean, we see anger, we see the betrayal, we see sarcasm, we see arrogance, we see sadness, we see forgiveness, we see so many layers to this character in this episode, and this is what I've been waiting for, more than just the single tear down the face at every kind of high stakes or intense situation. There's no predictable single tear down the cheek here. There are some tears in his eyes, but he doesn't let them fall. He holds them back, and you see it's kind of tears of anger and betrayal. This is so much better. This is what I've been waiting for. We also get some kind of really good speechy kind of moments. Maybe not a full-on speech, but a lot of the line delivery, a lot of what he's saying feels very powerful. And I really felt those core elements of what makes the Doctor, or the core elements that should be in any incarnation of the Doctor, really started to come through here. From the fact that he always seems to be one step ahead of everyone. Well, not always, but he figures out what's happening and becomes one step ahead of everybody. There's no doubt in this episode that he is gonna save everybody. He has confidence and arrogance. The way he laughs at the barber, sees right through his stories. I think this is Ncuti's strongest episode yet. And I think something that really, really helps with this scene, but also is just brilliant in this entire episode, and in fact gets my Artron up this week. Folks, you know that I give this up pretty much every week, but this week it's so deserved as the Artron. Murray Gold, The music in this particular episode is something else. It's incredible. Not only did the music in this episode heighten these emotionally charged moments in the episode, but it also fully immersed us within the culture of the episode. And I must also say that the costume and makeup team for this episode are also integral in that achievement. This episode fully immerses you within this culture and within this life, and I think it was just really, really well done. Then later on you have the use of the 15th Doctor's theme, which I think is probably the best instance of his theme being used in any episode. We have heard it in other episodes, obviously. It's his theme. We hear it pretty much every episode, but the use of it in this episode was really powerful, really, really worked. Just in general, I think the music in this episode was a step up, which is really saying something, considering that I do up Murray Gold pretty much every single week. But I think there was something about the music in this episode that just elevated everything that little bit more. And I had goosebumps on multiple occasions watching this episode. I think overall this is just a great episode in terms of the mise-en-scène, in terms of the musical score. Everything combined together, it just worked extremely well. After this whole commotion with Omo and the Doctor kind of feeling betrayed, this is when Belinda then arrives. But before she does arrive, she did notice a spooky child in the street. And folks, that spooky child is none other than Captain Poppy. Captain Poppy from Space Babies. What? I'm sure that's going to be relevant in some way. Otherwise, why the hell was Captain Poppy walking in the streets of Lagos? But what? I'm so confused. What's going on? But actually, now Belinda has arrived. But I just want to go back to Murray Gold for a second, because there was another great moment that was really heightened by the music in this episode, and that was when the true identity of the barber was revealed. And this gets another up here, because I really appreciated the whole bait and switch of this situation, that it wasn't actually another pantheon story. It wasn't just another god of the pantheon that we've kind of come to expect in these stories, and because it did seem like that was the direction we were going in, and we did have that first kind of false reveal, I am this god, and I am this god, and I am this god, and I was thinking, here we go. Kind of a bit predictable. And obviously we went into this episode already with this assumption that Anansi was going to be part of the story. And I really appreciated that they kind of lent into those themes, and then and it was a complete misdirect, and then swerved down a completely different route that still kind of fed into that theme of gods, but in a different way. And I feel like this has worked really, really well in terms of playing with our expectations. In this instance, using our expectations of God stories and then switching it up, as opposed to, say, Lux, where we didn't really go in with the assumption of a god and then suddenly there was a god. So I think they've done a really good job of keeping us on our toes in terms of these stories surrounding the gods. I will also say that the barber was played incredibly well. He was very calm, very menacing. He didn't raise his voice. He was a brilliant villain. And then even when it was then revealed that he was just a man, just human, the performance here was really, really good by Aryan Bakari. So I would like to just shout him out there as well within this comment, because I think he was played incredibly well. Now, there is one little comment I would make about this whole revelation here, and it is definitely a me problem, so it's not a down. I know it's me, I just can't get my brain around it. I was slightly confused about the concept of the Nexus. Not what its purpose is. I understand that he created it, I understand what it's for, but I can't get my head around where it is. Is it a planet? Is it another dimension? Is it somewhere on a god's desk as a little thing and the god's a giant? That's what I'm struggling to get my head around, and Danny, bless him, has tried to explain it to me multiple times, and I just cannot get my brain around it. I just can't grasp the concept of it. So yeah, maybe one little comment is that it was slightly confusing, and I've watched this episode multiple times at this point, and I'm still struggling a little bit here. But overall, you know, it's not a down, it's definitely me problem. It is explained, I just can't get my head around it. Please let me know if you're also a bit confused about what the Nexus is. Physically, what is the Nexus? Now, speaking of misdirects in this episode, there was another great misdirect, and that revolved around who Abby was. Now, I will admit for quite a while I did think she was going to be revealed to be Susan, especially because there was obviously this recognition between her and the Doctor, and there was all these comments about being left behind. And obviously Susan was teased so much in season 1 that I wouldn't be surprised if we did then see her in season 2. And I genuinely did think, is she Susan? Obviously she wasn't Susan at all, nothing to do with Susan whatsoever, but I thought this misdirect was really, really clever because I wonder if that was the intention to make us think that. But she is, of course, Abena, daughter of Anansi, which then led to another surprise in this episode, which is Jo Martin. I did not expect to see the fugitive Doctor in this episode, in this season really, but definitely not in this episode. Now there is a reason I haven't given it an up, but I'm also not going to give it a down, but I do feel a little bit like, is that it? Jo Martin, or the fugitive Doctor, has kind of become this cameo Doctor. And while it was so great to see her, I literally gasped when she appeared. I did not expect to see her there, and it was great. I just feel like I really want to know more about her story. I want to have a proper exploration of the fugitive Doctor's adventures. And I know Big Finish have started to venture into that, but in terms of on-screen, we keep seeing this Doctor teased in cameos in various episodes, but we never seem to get the full picture of who she is, what her story is. I mean, she even commented that maybe her story will... her story is continuing, but yeah, I just feel like it's great to see her, but I want to see more of her. So that is why it is neither an up or a down, merely an observation, because it was great to see her, but it was slightly kind of shadowed over by the fact that I want more of her, and it felt a little bit like a cameo for the sake of a cameo, and I want a proper in-depth exploration of this character. But equally, great to see her. Also, she was at the premiere, so now does anyone else feel like Michelle Gomez being at the premiere could mean something more than we all thought originally? Just saying. Anyway, once the barber's true plan is revealed, which is to kill all the gods, and Abby is like, do you know what? That means you're going to kill my dad. And with a little bit of encouragement from Belinda, because at first she didn't mind, but Belinda, I love that line, hurt people, and I think that's a really interesting concept, and I think it's true, and it's up to you to decide if you're going to change that pattern. But Abby does decide that she's going to help the Doctor to stop this from happening, which leads me to another up for this episode. I really love the story of the slaves using braids to share maps to freedom. One of the best elements of Doctor Who is that you can learn from it. I mean, every time you have a historical figure appear in an episode, you're basically getting a history lesson within that episode, within that story. And with this particular episode, not only did we get a history lesson, but I also got a cultural lesson. And I really loved that. I thought it was so interesting. I love to learn about cultures that are different to mine. And this whole episode is really great at telling those different stories. But I think this particular story really hit me, and I thought it was really well done. I loved I'm loath to say animation, because I'm not sure that animation is the right word, but the way that the stories are told through the kind of picture art. I'm sure there's a better way of explaining that. It's not an animation as in a cartoon, it's like stop motion. Maybe that's the right word. Someone will tell me in the comments what it is. And then also I really love the fact that this technique was then used to help the Doctor to save everybody, to save the day. And I just thought it was a really great addition to this episode. So then, of course, they do find the story engine, and the Doctor finds a way to stop the barber from reaching his destination, which leads me to another up for this episode. I really love the concept of the Doctor overloading the machine with this never-ending story of his life, or his lives. I also love this whole concept. I love the whole concept of this episode, and the sentiment of the power that stories hold. This feels like the perfect story for a series that has been running for 60 plus years and has told so many stories. Then this whole concept of a giant robot spider that is powered by stories, by the power of stories. It's one of those kind of huge Doctor Who ideas that works as a kind of surface level sci-fi spin, sci-fi story, but then also it's kind of rich and layered in its own right as well. So there's so much you can take from this. It can be a cool, wacky sci-fi thing, but also what is it actually saying? It's talking about the power of storytelling So I think there's so many layers to this story. I will say, it would have been nice to see more of the spider. Pretty much every shot that we did see of the spider in the episode, we'd already seen in the trailer. We didn't really see much more of the spider in the episode that we hadn't seen in the trailers beforehand. And it looked so cool, so I just wanted to see more of it. Although the scene where the Doctor does open the door and we do see the spider for the first time did look really, really cool. But that's why. I just want to see more of it because it looked really, really cool. And I guess probably what sums this all up and why this episode is so strong is the writer, Inua Ellams. He writes like a Doctor Who pro. Everything about this story, it flows, it pops with Doctor Who-iness. It just works incredibly well. And I think the reason for that is he is a Doctor Who fan. And it really shows in this episode. He gets it. He gets Doctor Who. It's not such a simple episode. There's complexities to it. There's layers to it. He's written the character of the Doctor so incredibly well. He's written the relationship between the Doctor and the companion incredibly well. He just understood the assignment so well, and I think part of that is being a fan. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a rocky road to have a fan writing for the show they're a fan of. But I think in this instance, it worked incredibly in his favour. It worked in the show's favour, and I think he deserves a round of applause for delivering such a wonderful episode. Again, I think this was a really, really strong episode. I will admit that even after multiple viewings, as I say, I've still struggled a little bit to get my head around the more complex elements of the storyline. But at the same time, I guess that's kind of a good thing that we're getting more complex storylines as opposed to something rather silly like Space Babies. I'll take complex over Space Babies any day. And now I've just reminded myself that Space Babies is going to become important, isn't it, with Captain Poppy? I definitely think this is the strongest episode in terms of Ncuti and in terms of him really showing the range of the Doctor and exploring the full gamut of what the Doctor is, the Doctor's characteristics. And I also think it worked as a really good episode to strengthen that relationship between Belinda and the Doctor. I think this has probably been the best episode in terms of that relationship and seeing a real good Doctor-companion dynamic. But quite honestly, this whole season has been such an improvement on season 1. We have been met with great episodes consistently for weeks at this point, which is great. It's so nice to go into an episode and come out of an episode with so much positive to say about it and not really much negative to say. I mean, this episode has 1 down, so that really speaks for itself, doesn't it? It is making my rankings harder and harder each week, I'm not going to lie. I have no idea where to place this one in my rankings so far because they've all been so good that I just don't know. But I'll think about it a little bit and we shall see. We shall see where it ends up in the ranking. So obviously do keep your eyes peeled for the spoiler discussion where you will find out where it places in my ranking, and we'll have the Easter eggs coming later in the week as well. Also make sure that you go back and check out all the previous episodes coverage as well if you haven't seen those already. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.